On November 11th, 2026, Route 66 turns 100 years old, and America is already getting ready to celebrate it again. Not really as a highway. As an idea people can still sell. A roughly 2,400-mile road trip dream, sold through diners, motels, gas stations, trading posts, and the promise that somewhere between Chicago and California, the older version of America is still waiting. But that is also where the problem begins. Over the next decades, 5 faster interstates, Interstate 55, Interstate 44, Interstate 40, Interstate 15, and Interstate 10 replaced the old highway, piece by piece. And by 1985, Route 66 was officially retired as a United States highway. Here are 10 famous Route 66 stops where that split is easiest to see. Let's start with Glen Rio. Glen Rio sits on the Texas-New Mexico state line. For decades, it lived from the old road. Then Interstate 40 bypassed the town in 1975. It died because the traffic moved. Today, Glen Rio's historic district includes the old Route 66 roadbed and 17 abandoned buildings. So the question is this: why can America celebrate Route 66 so loudly while the buildings that fed it, fueled it, and rented rooms to its travelers are still sitting there empty? The first answer is that Route 66 was never just scenery. It was a business model. Every slow mile created another reason to stop. That was the economy Route 66 created. Small businesses did not need every traveler to stay for a week. They needed them to stop for gas, buy lunch, sleep for one night, or take one photograph before getting back in the car. But the interstate system changed that relationship. The new roads were faster, wider, cleaner, and easier to standardize. Travelers still moved across the country. They just no longer had to pass through the same towns to do it. And once the traffic moved to exits, the money moved with it. The new winners were easy to see: branded gas stations, chain restaurants, chain motels, and exits built to move people through fast. The old losers, the motels, cafes, gas stations, and trading posts built around the slower road, were harder to notice because they did not disappear all at once. Little by little, Route 66 became more valuable as an idea than as the daily machine that once kept those places alive. And once the idea becomes more valuable than the road itself, something strange happens. Some places do not just lose the business. The lost business becomes the reason people stop. Two Guns, Arizona is one of those places. It sits along Interstate 40 between Flagstaff and Winslow, the kind of place many drivers now pass in seconds. But beside the faster road are the remains of the older idea: a roadside stop, a gas station, a tourist trap, a place built for people who were curious enough to pull over. That is what makes Two Guns different from Glen Rio. Two Guns was closer to a roadside attraction that lost its reason to charge admission. And now, the attraction is the ruin itself. The same thing happened farther west, near Flagstaff, at Twin Arrows. Along the old Route 66, near Interstate 40, exit 219, the trading post is gone as a working business. But the arrows are still there. They are the part people stop for now. The symbol survived after the store died, so when people say Route 66 is coming back, this is where the question becomes uncomfortable. Coming back for who? That question becomes hardest in Amboy. It sits in the Mojave Desert in California, along the old Route 66, with exactly the kind of sign and empty road feeling that modern nostalgia knows how to use. But the old town behind the image is harder to bring back. Albert Okura bought Amboy in 2005 and spent years trying to turn it back into a Route 66 destination. In one sense, he did. Roy's Motel and Cafe is again one of the most recognizable stops on the road. But that is also the limit of the story, because a sign can be restored faster than a town can be rebuilt. The official Roy site still describes the motel and bungalows as something to be rehabilitated in the future. And that matters, because Route 66 nostalgia can bring people back to a place for 10 minutes, but it cannot automatically create enough demand for rooms, staff, water, maintenance, insurance, and all the ordinary systems that make a destination work again. You can see the same problem, just less dramatically, in Newberry Springs. The Baghdad Cafe made the town internationally recognizable, and as Route 66 approaches its centennial, locals are hoping the anniversary brings more visitors back. But even there, fame does not fix the pipes, rooms, roads, or businesses around it. Newberry Springs had its own Route 66 heyday in the 1950s. Then Interstate 40 came through in the 1970s, and drivers could pass the town without really seeing it. That is the pattern again. The road did not vanish, the reason to stop did. And then there is Tucumcari, New Mexico, which is important because it proves this story is harder than the slogan makes it sound. The Census Bureau estimated its population at 5,082 in 2025. But that does not mean the old Route 66 economy is healthy everywhere inside it. A town can still be alive, still advertise the road, still have places that work, while older motel signs and empty rooms fade around it. And that is the split running through the whole road. Route 66 can be famous, photographed, promoted, and celebrated, while the older business model underneath it keeps shrinking. But fame does not always create the same kind of decline. That is Oatman, Arizona, a former mining town on historic Route 66, built into the desert hills west of Kingman, and now famous for something almost too perfect for modern tourism: wild burros walking through the street. On paper, that sounds like the opposite of abandonment, but Oatman shows a different problem. The burros are not just background. They are the attraction, the brand, the thing people slow down to photograph. In November 2023, the Bureau of Land Management estimated the Black Mountain Herd Management Area at 1,925 wild burros. The appropriate management level was 478. So the attraction is also a management problem. Here, Route 66 did not fail by becoming empty. It became a ghost town experience that has to feel old enough to sell, but busy enough to keep selling. And from there, the story gets harder to keep simple. In Oklahoma, near Luther, stands the Threat Filling Station. Built around 1915 from local sandstone, it served African American travelers along Route 66 during the Jim Crow era. The National Trust describes it as the only known Black-owned and operated gas station on the Mother Road during that time. That changes the meaning of the whole road. Because for some travelers, Route 66 was not just a vacation route. It was a map of where it was safe to stop. But some Route 66 places did find a second life. The Chain of Rocks Bridge once carried Route 66 across the Mississippi River between Illinois and Missouri. Then, in 1967, the new Chain of Rocks Bridge carrying Interstate 270 opened just 2,000 feet upstream. The old bridge closed in 1968. In 1999, it reopened to the public as part of the Route 66 Bikeway. And in 2006, it was listed in the National Register of Historic Places. That is a kind of rescue, but it is not the old road coming back. The same idea appears in Sapulpa, Oklahoma. The TP Drive-In was built in 1949. It stayed part of the Route 66 experience for decades, then closed in 1999. Then, after new ownership and major renovations, it reopened in April 2023 with concessions, a playground, and on-site Spartan trailers that can be rented for overnight stays. But again, the lesson is not that nostalgia alone saved it. The lesson is that nostalgia needed a new business model. That is the hopeful version of Route 66. But it is also the filter: money, ownership, and whether an old place can become useful enough to stay open now. The National Park Service has supported more than 170 Route 66 preservation projects since 2001. But the grants are cost-share grants. Applicants have to bring at least half of the money themselves. By 2022, the program had awarded $2.55 million and leveraged another $3.98 million in matching funds. And that changes the story. Because a place can matter historically and still not have enough money to open its doors again.